Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jashoranandana Braja Janaranjana Jashoranandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajakacarya Satara Sata Shri Shriman His Divine Grace Abhay Chanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jaya Nityalila Bhavishtam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajakacarya Satara Sata Shri Shriman His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Prabhupada Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gaur Premanandi All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga, and Srila Prabhupada. Reading from Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita, Volume 6, Chapter titled Chant Hare Krishna and Fight. The people are in darkness, said Prabhupada, and the politicians are keeping them like dogs, hogs, and camels, taking a vote from them and becoming a leader. Nobody protested last night, however, that I called all men dogs, hogs, and camels. No one came forward and said, you are using very strong words. Because it is all a fact. They especially liked your idea, said Hridayananda Goswami, of American money and Indian culture. They applauded for that. Yes, that is my mission, said Prabhupada. I am doing that. I am bringing money from America. Nobody is paying me. It is not a joke. 10 lakhs of rupees. Who else brings? Even big export companies don't bring so much, said Gopal Krishna. And they will be glad, said Prabhupada. They have got money and they are getting culture. I am trying for United Nations. That is the real attempt. Not the United Nations, all rogues and thieves and cheaters, barking dogs. I am trying for real United Nations. Let us cooperate together. Srila Prabhupada's disciples rallied to hear him speak like this, and they resolved to somehow counteract the forces of ignorance through Krishna consciousness. He said they should proceed slowly but surely, just as he had done. He had begun humbly, loitering on the streets of New York, and before that he had been living alone in the Radha Damodar temple. But now there was a Bombay temple, a palace that would be crowded with thousands of guests to see the deity and attend cultural programs. Do it enthusiastically, said Srila Prabhupada. You are all young men. Our enthusiasm is coming from you, Srila Prabhupada said Tamal Krishna. I am an old man, said Prabhupada faintly. But the devotees didn't accept that. Srila Prabhupada was never Yovana, spiritually ever fresh. Each night, Srila Prabhupada had a different devotee read a verse and purport. Leading disciples like Hridayananda Goswami and Giriraj would lecture, and Prabhupada would speak afterward. He continued stressing India's real message to the world and the misfortune that occurs when people, especially the Indians, neglect it. Based on his bold statement, some devotees had made a big sign and posted it outside the pandal. The modern civilization is a failure. The only solution is Krishna consciousness. In his evening lecture, Srila Prabhupada advised the hearers against identifying with any political party. One day someone is a prime minister, he said, and the next day that person is finished. Although Prabhupada had begun his lecture series by apologizing to the audience, saying he could not speak much because of his poor health, each night he very strongly argued that Krishna consciousness is the only solution. And during the question and answer period that followed his lecture, he was often explosive. When chanting, a man asked through the microphone at the front of the stage, you chant the name of Rama as well as Krishna, but I do not see any photograph of Rama here. What is the reason? You do not see, but can you hear? Prabhupada asked. I do not see, the man insisted. Srila Prabhupada exploded. But you do not hear. And he went on to explain that hearing is the best way of understanding that which you cannot see. Another man asked how a religious-minded person could move in the material world. Prabhupada replied, therefore, you have to understand your spiritual identification. But because you are fools and rascals, you are thinking, I am this body. He said that to realize this knowledge, one must be trained by a spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada was aware that most of the questioners had no serious intentions of following him. So sometimes he reprimanded them like an older brother for their foolishness. Even their asking philosophical questions with no intention of following was itself foolishness. But Srila Prabhupada continued to offer the diamond of Krishna consciousness, even when the inquirer didn't possess the purchase price of sincerity. We should read that again. But Srila Prabhupada continued to offer the diamond of Krishna consciousness, even when the inquirer didn't possess the purchase price of sincerity. He offered it nonetheless, and at great expense to his own physical condition. When a man rhetorically asked Prabhupada to kindly enlighten him about the soul, Srila Prabhupada replied, that is already explained, that you are a soul within the body. Srila Prabhupada elaborated on how the senses are superior to dull matter. The mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is higher than the mind, and the soul is highest of all. So it requires study, he said. It requires education. The education is there. The books are there. The teachers are there. Unfortunately, you are not interested to take this spiritual education. You are now interested in technology, how to hammer. That's all. Srila Prabhupada ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, 9th chapter, text 15. Chapter titled Brahma's Prayers for Creative Energy. Yasyavatara gunakama vidambanani. Yasyavatara gunakama vidambanani. Namani yeshu vigame vivavas grananti. Namani yeshu vigame vivasa grananti. Tenaka janma shamalam sashaiva hitva. Tenaka janma shamalam sashaiva hitva. Sangyatya pavritamritam tamajam prapadye. Sangyatya pavritamritam tamajam prapadye. Please chant. Yasyavatara gunakama vidambanani. Namani yeshu vigame vivasa grananti. Tenaka janma shamalang sasaiva hitva. Samyantya paritamritang tamajam prapadye. Yasyavatara gunakama vidambanani. Namani yeshu vigame vivasa grananti. Tenaka janma shamalang sasaiva hitva. Samyantya paritamritang tamajam prapadye. Yasyavatara gunakama vidambanani. Namani yeshu vigame vivasa grananti. Tenaka janma kamalang sasaiva hitva. Samyantya paritamritang tamajam prapadye. Back to Jacob. Yasyavatara gunakama vidambanani. Namani yeshu vigame vivasa grananti. Tenaka janma shamalang sasaiva hitva. Samyantya paritamritam tamajam prapadye. Ladies. Yasyavatara gunakama vidambanani. Namani yeshu vigame vivasa grananti. Tenaka janma shamalang sasaiva hitva. Samyantya paritamritang tamajam prapadye. Yasya, whose avatara, incarnations, guna, transcendental qualities, karma, activities, vidambanani, all mysterious, namani, transcendental names, yea, those, asavigame, while quitting this life, vivasa, automatically, grinanti, invoke, te, they, anayaka, many, janma, births. Samalam, accumulated sins. Sasa, immediately. Eva, certainly. Itpa, giving up. Sangyanti, obtain. Apavrita, open. Amritam, immortality. Tam, him. Ajam, the unborn. Prapadye, I take shelter. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Let me take shelter of the lotus feet of Him whose incarnations, qualities, and activities are mysterious imitations of worldly affairs. One who invokes His transcendental names, even unconsciously at the time he quits this life, is certainly washed immediately of the sins of many, many births and attains Him without fail. Please repeat. Let me take shelter of the lotus feet of Him whose incarnations, qualities, and activities are mysterious imitations of worldly affairs. One who invokes His transcendental names, even unconsciously, at the time he quits this life, is certainly washed immediately of the sins of many, many births and attains Him without fail. Purport. The activities of the incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are a kind of imitation of the activities going on in the material world. He is just like an actor on a stage. An actor imitates the activities of a king on stage, although actually he is not the king. Similarly, when the Lord incarnates, He imitates parts with which He has nothing to do. In Bhagavad Gita 4:14, it is said that the Lord has nothing to do with the activities in which He is supposedly engaged. Namam karmani limpanti name karma palaspriha. The Lord is omnipotent. Simply by His will, He can perform anything and everything. When the Lord appeared as Lord Krishna, He played the part of the son of Yashoda and Nanda. And He lifted the Govardhan hill, although lifting a hill is not His concern. He can lift millions of Govardhan hills by His simple desire. He does not need to lift it with His hand. But He imitates the ordinary living entity by this lifting. And at the same time, He exhibits His supernatural power. Thus, His name is chanted as the lifter of Govardhan Hill, or Sri Govardhanadhari. Therefore, He acts in His incarnations, and His partiality to the devotees are all imitations only, just like the stage makeup of an expert dramatical player. His acts in that capacity, however, are all omnipotent, and the remembrance of such activities of the incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is as powerful as the Lord Himself. Ajamil remembered the holy name of the Lord Narayan by merely calling the name of his son Narayan, and that gave him a complete opportunity to achieve the highest perfection of life. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chaksuram Tamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Mukam Karoti Vachalam Bangum Langai Tegram Yat Kripatamam Bande Shri Gurum Diratanam. So this interesting that Lord Brahma, the creator, he's offering these prayers, and he's specifically giving some indication that the Lord's pastimes through His incarnations are mysterious imitations of worldly affairs. But yet at this time, worldly affairs, at least in this particular manifestation, were not visible or present. But the Lord had enlightened Lord Brahma with this particular vision before his creation. And it seems that this is, in one sense, the only way possible for Lord Brahma to have any indication of what should be done, because there was no manual, so to speak. When we purchase something in a store, whatever it is, there's always something. Sometimes it's clear, sometimes it's not clear, depending on the country of origin. But nevertheless, there is an attempt to give some instruction how to operate the. So we see that Lord Brahma is being given Tene Brahma Hridaya Adi Kaviya. He's being given some instructions internally through the heart. And this is also an indication how Krishna is instructing not just Lord Brahma, but anyone, as it's described in Prabha Lilamrita, anyone who is sincere. Tesham satatayuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami buri yogam tam. Yenamamu priyantite. This buri yogam, to those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give the intelligence by which they can come to me. So this is the same process. It hasn't changed from the time and the advent of Lord Brahma. The same method of instruction is there as it is today. And the only qualification is sincerity. Someone may think that, well, I've come to this Krishna consciousness movement, I've been practicing for 2 or 3 years, but I don't seem to have the realization I was seeking. And we've seen such situations, not necessarily in our society, but in other places. Many people seek spiritual life cheaply. And just as Prabhupada was chastising the audience after the fact amongst his disciples, that they're not ready to pay the price of a diamond. They're not ready to pay the price. And that price is this: to those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love. But that is not a simple thing for someone who is unfamiliar. And so therefore, Krishna is giving indications how we can love him through these pastimes, which seem to imitate material affairs. So initially we have some way to relate, although theoretically, we understand Krishna's pastimes, that they're not mundane. They have no tinge of any polluted, contaminated effects of the modes of material nature. But it's not easily possible, which is why there is so much caution about hearing from someone who is not a realized soul, who wants to infect the pure milk of these spiritual pastimes with the poison of their mental speculation and impersonal voidist philosophy. In Vrindavan, during the rainy season, there is very popular pastimes that are being portrayed. And they have these ras mandaps that sprout everywhere. And people will go to see people acting out the Lord's pastimes, usually done by young boys, playing all the parts, male and female. And they're dressed very elaborately, just like it's described in Krishna book, where how the forest flowers and the feathers of the exotic birds and the minerals of Vrindavan are all used to decorate the bodies. And so it's a very interesting presentation. And sometimes devotees would leave the temple premises thinking, let me go and enjoy. Because that is the nature, right? People want to go enjoy some performance, Anandamayo Bhyasat, always seeking some pleasure. But the real pleasure, of course, is in Srila Prabhupada's books. But not taking shelter in that way, they're going outside. And when Prabhupada was informed, he said they should not do that. These are not being presented according to the scripture. It's all simply speculation. He was very strong. He actually said if they go out, they should not come back. How much? What does it mean? What is another definition of the word guru? What is that definition? Heavy. Not just heavy with knowledge, but heavy how to apply the knowledge, which sometimes require, as Srila Prabhupada compared the materialists to this hammer. They only know how to hammer. So sometimes you have to hammer them because that's all they know. But the one who is genuinely sincere, he takes to heart that the Bhagavad Gita is giving him the correct guidance. So Lord Brahma had his instruction manual, and we have ours. Krishna is also speaking directly to Arjuna, the same as he spoke to Brahma. It's not different. This is for the benefit, not just of Lord Brahma. Otherwise, Lord Brahma did not have to compose Brahma Samhita. He already knew everything. What was the necessity to document it and for whom? But we can understand that this is for the benefit of those who are coming in this sampradaya. Lord Brahma is our original acharya, directly empowered from within the heart, by the sound of Krishna's flute, actually. Who can imagine this Gayatri mantra, which we are receiving and which we should take very seriously. Sometime one devotee asked Srila Prabhupada, why does the spiritual master get sick? And Prabhupada became very serious. He said, because my second initiated disciples are not chanting their Gayatri. And sometimes we think that this is just some tradition, some ritual. And we don't take it seriously, that it somehow or other. No, but how valuable this human form of life is, that we've been elevated by the mercy of the spiritual master to have this second chance. Right? Diksha means not just formal initiation, but it means rebirth in that sense. Every living entity takes birth first from the womb of the mother, and then second by the mercy of the spiritual master, if he is so fortunate. Not just that by some performance, they have their different samskars, and the one samskar is the upayan, he gets the thread. But this is not second initiation. This is just caste system. You're a Brahmin family, okay, so you get this thread. But he has not been reborn by knowledge. So this is and Prabhupada emphasized here. And that rebirth first, when one understands that he is not this body. Because if he understands that, then he can appreciate what it means to take initiation, to be not this body and to adopt that attitude and intent which will guide him from that point forward. So it's a very serious stage of life that one has to, that when he has the opportunity, he should accept it. And he should take it in such a way that he makes the spiritual master satisfied. Just as we're praying, this Yasya Prasadat Bhagavat Prasado. This is not just this satisfaction, because when one pleases the spiritual master, then automatically Krishna is pleased. And obviously, if one doesn't please the spiritual master, then how can Krishna be pleased? But sometimes we're thinking that simply by my own endeavor, I will achieve some merit, some realization, some philosophical expertise to conduct myself articulately with others of the same propensity. There's simply this arguing. We read that earlier on in the purport, that these people are simply content to argue. They have no real desire to make any attempt, sincere attempt at advancing in spiritual life, which ultimately requires surrender. There's a Daiviyeshu Gunamaye. We understand that this is very difficult to come, but how do we do it? By this proportional surrender. And that encourages one, that he sees it. Yes, I am attempting in some simple way. Let me surrender to the instructions of my spiritual master. Whatever that is, whatever you can wholeheartedly pursue, because that will give you the impetus to continue when you see that the result is automatically perceived. No one has to tell you, but now you're on second level, or now you're on third level. You have to enter into some competition, and you have to conquer over your enemies. And now we award you this special title, Maharata, Adirata. No. One becomes automatically Tadarajas Tamo Bhavo Kama Lobhadhyasya. He sees that by this attempt, by refraining from sinful activities, by following these principles, which are meant to elevate one to the level of the mode of goodness, from which that level only knowledge can be achieved. There is no knowledge outside of the mode of goodness. It is not possible. It's like when you're conducting some experiment, you have to follow so many protocol. And if you make one mistake, then the experiment is a failure. The results are compromised. Or even worse, you have an explosion and you kill yourself. There's one mistake. One wrong addition at the incorrect moment results in a catastrophe. We've seen it happen all the time. You read about huge explosions in these chemical factories. Why? Obviously, somebody made a mistake. It's called an accident only because someone doesn't want to elaborate, perhaps. But there's no such thing as so-called accidents. Human error. Ultimately, it comes down to that. Human error. A miscalculation in some way, whether at the beginning, the middle, or at the end, has caused this failure resulting in this catastrophe. And the same way, we're subject to those same steps, protocol, procedure. You cannot jump, as Prabhupada said, up to the 10th canto without first approaching the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. And so there is this gradual process of elevation. But some don't want. They see these pastimes which appear to be material. But the word imitation is there for us so that we have a reference. We know that these are not imitation. This is the actual reality. It's just that to our eyes, it appears to be imitation. And according to our level of realization, our minds see it in that way. So this is the point through which one, as Lord Brahma instructed, Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena. Prabhupada also said, you don't have the eyes to see Lord Ram. Doesn't have the eyes. Nama Chintamani Krishna Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. Everything is there. The Supreme Lord is not different from his name, but he doesn't understand that the name Rama is the same as the form Ram, as the same as the name pastimes, and along with his paraphernalia. But he cannot hear. He doesn't understand. And so therefore he cannot see. That's Shabda Praman. He couldn't see this actual evidence through hearing. Actual evidence. So many different points here in this regard, especially the point where even unconsciously, and the devotees in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness are doing their best to chant with full consciousness and struggling with the six senses, including the mind, every day to sincerely chant the names of the Lord. Not just for themselves, but because this is the Yuga Dharma. So everyone is automatically satisfied. But some people think that they're just idly sitting in a temple and chanting these names. These are lazy fellows. But they cannot do it. They cannot sit down and chant for 90 minutes. Because the ability, the taste, the ruchi, they cannot touch that due to their impure state of mind and heart. So yes, we want to come up to that level where we understand things in such a way that there is no other shelter, that we never seek to go to some outside person, as is the tendency. One feels like, I'm not getting everything here. I have to seek some additional benefit. I have to get some alternate therapy. There is no alternate therapy. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi. There is birth, death, disease, and old age. And to the extent that one understands this sequence of events, he appreciates that there's not much that can be done. When one gets the notice, he can accept it or he can fight it. But the fighting is simply lead to some unfortunate circumstances by which he is not impelled to take shelter of the Supreme Lord and seeks alternate shelter, thinking that something else will save me. Nothing else can save one. Rake Krishna Mare Ke, Mare Krishna Rakete. Even the simplest person knows this. If you go to any village in India, everyone knows Rake Krishna Mare Ke, Mare Krishna Rakete. Only Krishna can save you. And if Krishna wants to save you, no one can kill you. And if Krishna wants to kill you, nobody can save you. And of course, Krishna is not doing this killing directly. He doesn't have to. That's there also. He doesn't have to lift Govardhan Hill. He lifts it for the pleasure of his devotees. But he can do it. He's creating the entire cosmic manifestation and everything in it. And every mountain range and every other wonderful and glorious aspect that we are in awe of. How many pictures of sunsets or mountains or forests, everywhere you turn on social media, someone is, oh, how beautiful this is. But, to the devotee, he understands, of course, but they're enamored, but they don't understand who is in the background, who is the artist. But they do appreciate the beauty. But it's unfortunate that they do not take that one step further and try to appreciate. Let me understand, why am I created? What is my purpose? So we can appreciate everything about the Lord's pastimes. And our compassion should be how to bring others whose inability to see is preventing him from advancing in spiritual life with patience and tolerance and conviction. Everything has to be there. It is not happening in a moment for some. Although Srila Prabhupada indicated in Australia, that famous lecture, when the devotee asked, how long does it take for one to become self-realized, to realize God? Prabhupada said, just one moment. Just one moment. So the point of surrender is intricately linked to one's sincerity. It cannot be separated. One cannot achieve surrender without sincerity. It doesn't. These two things are simply the two sides of the same coin. If one is surrendered, then sincerity will follow. Prabhupada even went so far as to say that the only ingredient necessary for success in spiritual life is sincerity. Because that conquers everything. It conquers doubt. It dispels illusion. Because he gets the mercy of the spiritual master in Krishna. It doesn't matter what his qualifications are. The illiterate Brahmin who is reading Bhagavad Gita, not only was he not reading it, he was holding it upside down. And so, of course, everyone was making fun of him because everyone in the village knew he cannot read. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not make fun of him because he saw that this person is following the instructions of his spiritual master, who told him to read Bhagavad Gita every day, knowing that he was illiterate. But simply by hearing, because obviously he had heard Bhagavad Gita previously, and in his mind he appreciated how Krishna has taken up the position as the chariot driver of Arjuna. And that image was sufficient for him to develop this attachment, affection, and ultimately love. Simply by sincerely following the order of the spiritual master, he achieved what scholars cannot achieve. The scholars cannot achieve love simply by their dry study of the Vedas. Because there's no surrender, there's no sincerity, and as a result, there's no jnanam, big jnanam. So it is not possible without austerity. One cannot achieve Gyan or Vigyan. And this austerity in the age of Kali is very simple. Simply chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It's there for those who want it. The Bhagavad Gita has been around. Now, Srila Prabhupada, by his mercy, for the last, since the first purple edition, 1969. 1968, actually. So 54 years. And so many people, it is impossible in hindsight to reflect how this movement could come and rise and spread so quickly. There's nothing short of a miracle. But only those who are honest will acknowledge it. It didn't take 2,000 years or 1,300 years to spread all over the globe. No, it only took 54 years. So this is Srila Prabhupada's miracle. He has said it many times. And he gestured when the person questioned, what are your miracles? What miracle can you show? He said, this is the miracle. All these persons born outside of India, coming from this so-called outcast society, that they have become bhaktas. That is the miracle. But it is not a miracle for one who is sincere. He sees that Srila Prabhupada was simply following the order of his spiritual master. If one can simply limit himself to that, without any desire for profit, distinction, adoration, without thinking, let me become guru and start my own society, or have my own followers, or preach my own realization, however limited or ill-conceived it may be. This is the challenge, that in order to remain potent, one has to maintain that level of purity, which begins by being chaste and faithful to the spiritual master. Because without this, there can be nothing else. They have that saying in law, false in one thing, false in all things. I forget the exact Latin. It's been a while. But that establishes that you cannot, person who has one misconception, or who is a cheater, he cannot be truthful in any circumstances. There is no credibility. False in one thing, false in all things. So we have limited time and lots of activities to perform today to get ready for the public. So much cleaning has to be done to make sure all the public spaces are ready to greet our guests. Everything has to be done with the proper consciousness. We're inviting everyone into the Lord's house. And when a person walks in, he should get that impression. You should get that impression. They're not all advanced souls to overlook some of the things which may be insignificant. A person who is looking to find fault, he will find fault anywhere, in anything. But we should not give anyone a reason to find fault. We are the representatives of our spiritual master. We have a great responsibility to make the proper presentation on his behalf. So that is our only duty, actually. But it expands in so many ways to all of our activities. But ultimately, it is our only duty. Because if they have a good impression, then they will read Srila Prabhupada's book seriously. They'll say, oh, these are such nice individuals, such nice. How they have changed. How bright-faced people used to comment, and Prabhupada took note. Yes, why? Because they're abstaining from all sinful activities. This is very important. So any questions or comments? We can read the verse again. Let me take shelter of the lotus feet of him whose incarnations, qualities, and activities are mysterious imitations of worldly affairs. One who invokes his transcendental names, even unconsciously at the time he quits this life, is certainly washed immediately of the sins of many, many births and attains him without fail. Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu.
I don't think it's on. Is it on? Speak loud.
I just remembered when you were explaining about the mercy of Prabhupada. I just remembered one Prabhupada disciple. He told me he went up in the Himalayas, and
Bro, I still can't hear you. You have to.
One Prabhupada disciple told us that he went up in the Himalayas, and then there were these yogis there living in caves. And when they saw him and his companions, they immediately offered obeisances, literally, to them, and they told them, we don't know who's your Guru Maharaj, but he must be liberated. So otherwise, how will you become Vaishnava? You. So this was he was glorifying Prabhupada.
Yeah, many examples like this are there. You know, it should encourage us that if we can make that impression all the time, then people will take this movement seriously, take the philosophy seriously, and the world will actually change. Just like the devotees who are distributing food on the Hungarian border and the Polish border. You know, people are a little skeptical. They don't know, what are these Hare Krishnas? Why are they here? What is their motivation? But when they see them day in, day out, distributing prasadam from morning till night, thousands of plates, they can appreciate that this is, they have a concern, and they're demonstrating it by their activities. They may not relate to the philosophy, and they may not understand the potency of prasadam distribution. But they see that these people are sincere. What they're doing, they're not doing for any show. They're not trying to stage, what do they call? A photo op. Nobody else has to be there. They're just doing it out of love for the spiritual master and Krishna, and of natural compassion, which automatically arises in a devotee. Tatikshasva karunaka. No one has to tell him, you have to be compassionate. No. He's developing these qualities. Yashasti bhaktiya bhagavati akinchana sabaya gunatata samasite saha. Harava bhakta shikato mahaguna. Manoratena asati daivatobihi. Automatically, he's developing these good qualities. And those who are not practicing, they can never develop these qualities. They can only imitate. They can pretend. And anybody can spot a pretender for the most part. You know. Yes, Prabhu. Any other questions?
I wanted to ask about the sincerity. So how we understand that someone is sincere?
How do we understand? Well, just like in the Bhagavad Gita, it's how do you appreciate who is that learned person? How does he walk? How does he talk? How does he sit? So it's not some magic. Actions speak louder than words. A person who is sincere, he will act. He will not just speak sincerely. Oh yes, I love Krishna. I love everything about Krishna. Prabhu, could you help us? We want to carry the books out. No, I can't do that. That's not for me. He'll have some excuse. So this is a very easy way to check someone's sincerity. Not just that, and it's there in all the religious scriptures, actually. That person should simply glorify others, flatter others, or in that way, they're not true followers. They're not true followers. Because when the time comes to actually do the work, they will go away. So that is the real test of sincerity. What did Prabhupada say? Very telling. He said, when I leave, meaning when I enter into Samadhi, many of my disciples will leave. You know. And then what was the response? He said, don't be surprised who leaves, be surprised who stays. And that is the key. You know, this is, someone may criticize that there has been mission drift. ISKCON is not the same. It's, I didn't change, ISKCON changed. You see, this is all this, so many excuses. Everyone has the opportunity to maintain purity. It doesn't require to go anyplace else. If he thinks that something needs to be done, then he should stay and do it. What is the point? The boat is sinking, so I jump off and save myself. Okay. In one sense, we've heard Prabhupada say, save yourself, but that doesn't mean to abandon the mission of the spiritual master. That means to make it stronger. Put out the fire. You see the fire, put it out. You don't have to wait for somebody else. Something's wrong, try to change it. But many people don't have the patience or the tolerance. You know, this is, I mean, why does it say, Utsahanishta karma pravartana? Why does Nectar of Instruction say enthusiasm, patience, firm conviction? Why does it? Because it is meant for us to take with us at every stage of spiritual life, whether one comes as a neophyte, a new devotee, a guest, lives in a temple, is brahmachari, becomes grihasta. Whatever it is, he has to carry these qualities with him. It's not that these qualities become adulterated or somehow changed according to so-called time and circumstances. And now I am like this and I don't have to do this, or now I am like this and no. But that happens. Our job is to remain steady. You know, you can think how Prabhupada reacted under different circumstances. We're reading in the Lilamrita. He didn't change the philosophy to adjust to the deprogrammers or to Mr. Nair, who was trying to stop the construction at the Bombay Temple. No, he simply remained strong in the face of all adversity, regardless of whether it was coming from his godbrothers or from his disciples or from wherever. He had challenges. But in each circumstance, he knew exactly what to do. Why? Because he, first of all, kept his spiritual master in front. How would Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur react? It's very easy to see, because even the teachings, the life of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta is also, anyone, if he wants, can look into it. But he has to be very, how can you say, strong in his conviction, because just reading like Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's one small aspect, he said, who should live in the mat? Have you ever read that? Who should live in the mat? Very informative. but not for the faint of heart, not for those who are weak in their determination or faith. He didn't tolerate. People say, oh no, he tolerated this. No, he didn't tolerate. He knew exactly what to do, how to do it. And if we, from our neophyte position, see something that appears to be not correct according to some whatever misunderstanding of the philosophy, that's how we can appreciate that this is due to our inability to appreciate. But there is nothing, everything is the absolute truth without adulteration, coming from a pure realized soul. And in the same way, and even some people say, oh yes, I accept Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, but others I don't accept, for some reason. But it's just an excuse, a justification. For that reason, some people don't accept Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur because he was too heavy. He was too heavy. Any other questions, comments? Dr. Jacob, any? No? Okay, then it's getting late. And the clock is wrong, but that's okay. We know what time it is, 9:06. And Krishna has his own time. He wanted to eat at 9, not 8. So. Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. Nobody came, huh? Who was supposed to come? Oh. Oh, where's Jagadati? She's very responsible. She always gets somebody to help her. Is it just a time? Oh, but she told her, but then her clock is not right?
No, it's because originally, but then they changed and she forgot to another person because yeah, they said it's actually
It's Braj Mohan's. First thing is to always shut it. Thank you. Oh. Hare Krishna. Let's have David Damodar. They just want to shut down the Zoom. I mean, if you shut it from here, it's automatically shut. Also. Shut the camera. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.